Hello everybody, welcome to our garden chat number 15. We will discuss about the protests that are currently happening in Georgia, in Tbilisi, regarding to the foreign agent law and how it affects both the Georgian society and in the whole South Caucasus. We are going to be joined by Giorgi Rizhvadze. He's a Georgian civil activist, and so he will join in a minute, and I think he's already here. Just a second. Maybe Georgi, if you can send me, there we go. Hey Georgi, are you there? There you are.
Hi.
Hey, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, thanks. Thank you so much for joining us today. I was telling people that we are going to be discussing what's happening in Georgia right now. We are on May already of 2024, and there's some protests been going on for the last weeks. But first, Georgi, I wanted to just ask you to introduce yourself a little bit, and yeah, what do you do? What kind of civil society activist are you?
Thank you so much, Diego and the Bright Garden Voices, for inviting me for this session. I'm Giorgi Rizhvadze. I'm from Georgia, as you introduced me. I born and raised in Khula, which is in Ajara, west side of Georgia, in a remote area. So when I grew up, I came in Tbilisi for studying reason, but I always wanted to make something for my community, and with my friends, I established an organization called Solidarity Community, and we are doing a lot of things in it's a grassroots organization. Also, I'm really active in a civic society to promote democracy, human rights, and other kind of things in Georgia, to promote diversity as well. And I'm doing it for, I don't know, more than 6 or 7 years. I also have meetings with youngsters, and we are talking about democracy, about human rights, and so on. Yeah, that's a brief introduction of myself.
Thank you. We might go back to more details about what you do towards the end. But first, to put a little bit of context, could you tell us in your own words what is happening right now in Georgia with the foreign agent law? Can you give us some background?
Yes, I want to start talking with what is happening in Ukraine, because it was starting point, I think, when Russia launched full-scale invasion in Ukraine. And for Georgia, it was really hard to watch what was happening there, because we were in stuck, like people don't know what to do, and government as well. And it was like mixed messages from the government. And after this, like 1 year later, last year in March, government introduced foreign agent law, and after demonstration, they promised unconditionally that they would cancel the law. And because of the protest, because of the international reaction, and a lot of thousands of people came on the street, and it was big protest in Georgia. And after that, 1 year later, they reintroduced this law without the name agent, but they call it transparency law. Transparency of foreign influence law, draft law. Now it's still draft law, and now still we have second readings in Parliament and the discussions, and also in front of Parliament, thousands of people are gathered to protest this law.
So it's, you said they changed the name, but it's basically the same law?
Yeah, it's the same law without one word, agent, and now it's called law transparency of foreign influence.
So, based a little bit on what you just said, it does raise me the question of how come last year when this law was proposed and the protest forced them to take it down, that hasn't happened this time around? Because I believe the protests have been just as big or bigger maybe than last year.
It's becoming bigger and bigger, I would say, because yesterday it was so hard because there was clash between demonstration and the police, and also a lot of people injured, got arrested, and so on. And it was really hard to watch, and I was there as well. And I don't know. They said that they will not gonna change their what they said, that this law will pass. But also that was interesting because two or 3 days ago the government also had a rally for this law, and their messages are the famous words of Ilya Rizhvadze, and also it was really, I don't know, a lot of public sermons gathered in the rally. And yesterday, especially protesters, it was like, I don't know, I'm not good in numbers, but a lot of people gathered, and it was we have seen a police who were using overforce, and president also made a statement about that it was unacceptable to use force against peaceful protesters.
Could you tell us a little bit what the law is about? Why is it so controversial? Why does it bring people on the street?
Yes, of course. This law is going to sabotage, I would say, Georgian's integration in EU, because, as you know, we have already granted EU candidate status, and when this law reintroduced, a lot of international reactions came out, starting from EU and EU External Action Service, and they condemned this law, and they said that it is not European law, as well as it's not acceptable in EU standards. Also, US made a statement that it is not acceptable because it limits the democracy and undermines the democracy. Also, regarding this international reactions, people in Georgia are protesting because they see this law as a against democracy, against human rights, and against limiting freedom of speech, because this law is have instruments that would limit the limits freedom of speech, and also will I would say abolish a lot of NGOs who are working grassroots, who are working on human rights to defend people with disabilities, people with I don't know, a lot of religious minorities and other minorities as well. And because I don't think a lot of people and a lot of NGOs would register as a foreign agent in Georgia, and this will gonna make Georgia's democracy. It's gonna be really hard for Georgian democracy, and it's gonna undermine the. That is why they call it Russian law, because when they adopted in 2012 this law, civic society. It was hard for civic society, and now, as we can see in Russia, there are no any independent media sources. or independent NGOs who can defend human rights, and this law would make Georgia like that. So people doesn't want to have this kind of law which limits their rights, and also which is an attack Georgian democracy.
So, for example, will this, if this law were to pass, will it like affect also like the NGOs that you're part of, for example?
Yes, because we will gonna be foreign agents of foreign influence. So it's kind of stigma for civic society, and you know, in post-Soviet countries, is really hard to use this word because it's we have this past of Soviet repression, and this word is also have like so close connections to this past. And when you are foreign agent, so I'm doing it for Georgia. I'm doing my job for Georgian democracy, for people who want to have I don't know, to want to have their rights and so on. So I think I'm not doing it for, I don't know, to have a foreign influence. So it's gonna undermine NGOs, civic society, independent media organizations, and so on, and also to have this publicly stigmatizing and demonizing this NGOs and independent media sources.
And so, if I understood correctly from you, the law is currently being discussed in Parliament, I guess. Mm-hmm. How are the situation with the votes? Like, the government has the votes to pass the law, or is it, you know, uncertain?
Yeah, it's not. It's a certain that they said that they're gonna pass it, but protesters are gathered in front of Parliament, as I mentioned, to protest it. And now it's a second reading of the law, and then the president said she's gonna veto this law, but again 2 weeks later they can adopt the law, and they have this support from, because they are in majority. I mean, Georgian Dream. So if they wouldn't listen to the Georgian people, they would gonna adopt the law, which also it is important to mention that in this year we have election coming, and that this will gonna affect as well civic society, because it's gonna limit their involvement and their observation of the election.
Somebody wrote in the comments that they just voted and they passed to the second stage.
So yeah, now it was hearing, and I don't have the information, but yeah, that means more and more people are going to join the protest to pass to against the law, which most of the majority of the people are calling Russian law because of its nature, because of the
what do you think are the most likely scenarios that will happen now, or do you think it's too uncertain to know?
Now it's too uncertain to know, but I see protesters who are in the street, who are ready to defend their rights, who are ready to defend their freedom in the street. And I think this push from population would gonna affect the outcome of the law. So I'm optimistic that this law can pass, because it's gonna be it's gonna undermine Georgian democracy, and for example, the Freedom House said that going to affect the way how Georgia are governed, because this is a way of autocracy, and it's gonna semi-consolidated autocracy, and it's gonna affect Georgia and Georgian people and Georgian citizens. So I think it's hard to say, but I see protest. I see a lot of people who are ready to defend their right.
So do you think, like, for the law not to pass, that depends on the government taking back the law, or it depends on it getting voted down by the members of parliament?
Yeah, last year they said that they said that just like because of citizens protest and so on, they like just canceled the law. They have members of parliament who the number is I think they need 75 members of parliament, and they have 83 as I remember, and so they have as I say, the right to do it, but the people are pushing to cancel the law, and I think let's see what is gonna happen. But if this law passes, it's going to be it's going to undermine our democracy. So. And also, Bright Garden Voices is registered in Georgia, and we are going to foreign agents as well. So, and
yeah,
I don't
actually,
think,
my next question was about that, because Georgia plays an important role for NGOs working with the Armenian Azerbaijani conflict, just like ourselves, because of course it's the closest country and like the third a neutral land where Armenians and Azerbaijanis can meet. So first I wanted to ask you like about this, like what role, I mean, it's a little bit going off the topic, but then we'll come back to it. Because I mean, as Bright Garden Voices, we work with Armenian Azerbaijani conflict, but in that sense, we cannot ignore the role that Georgia plays in the conflict as a place for these people and like the people themselves, you know, to meet in person, to work together, etc. So first, I wanted to ask you, maybe based on your own experience or your own work with the civil society, in your opinion, how is this role that Georgia plays between Armenia and Azerbaijan?
Mm-hmm. Georgia in the last 2 or 3 decades was, as some people say, that island of democracy in the South Caucasus, and people from Azerbaijan and Armenia was coming here also to meet each other, to have a peaceful dialogue, and it is now as well a really important place for conflict affected areas. And the Georgia is a neutral place to meet for them, and I think it's going to affect, because when you don't have the trust in institutions, because this law would affect this as well. When you don't know that the rule of law is the I don't know, most important thing, and also when this law, if this law passes, it's going to be hard for civic society organizations to organize this kind of events in Georgia, because they will not going to see Georgia as a safe place maybe. Also, organizations like Bright Garden Voices and others who are registered in Georgia will going to be foreign agents, and I think it's going to be so hard for Georgians to work with them, because they don't want to have any connection with the foreign agents, because I don't see normal people who who would say about theirself that he or she is agent, right? Because nobody wants to be anyone's agent, and it's going to affect civic society. Especially, it's going to affect civic societies who are working on peace building and conflict transformation, and also besides of it, it's going to affect the reputation of Georgia, which we had before, that it's a safe place for meetings with the Armenians and Azerbaijanis, and not only with this conflict, but others ones who's and not only just maybe, I don't know, other activists who are in post-Soviet countries, and they want to move in safe place. Georgia was a heaven for them, but now it's going to affect Georgia's reputation, because it's gonna undermine democracy, and it will not going to be a safe place for civic society organizations and citizens, not only for Georgia, but for Azerbaijan and for Armenia as well.
Could you, going back to the law, could you, I think you mentioned it a little bit, but just to make it a little bit clearer, repeat a little bit, like, how are the timelines now? As we read, it's now on the second stage. What does that mean? How long will that mean until the president could veto it? And then does it go back? Like, what timelines are we talking about?
Now it's second reading, and they passed it, as somebody mentioned in the comments, and it's going to be third reading. I think the last day is 7th of May, which is in 2 weeks. And after this, if they pass it, then it's gonna be veto, and president said that she's going to veto this law. And after this, it's gonna be, as I remember, 2 weeks, 2 weeks, and then if they will pass it, it's gonna be disaster for us.
Then it cannot be vetoed again, or
No, it's just once.
I see. Okay. Okay, Georgi, thank you so much for all this overview about what's happening in Georgia. To close a little bit our conversation, I wanted to ask you, because I believe you have also some experience working with the Georgian Abkhaz issue and other internal issues of Georgia, also with the Muslim minority in Georgia. So from your personal experience, what do you think this experience of civil society within Georgia, the other countries of the South Caucasus, could learn from it?
Yes, I'm involved in Georgian Abkhaz meetings and Georgian South Ossetians meetings, and that peace dialogue. And this is the only way how Georgians and Abkhazians are communicating with each other, because it's a frozen conflict, and the role of Russia is high in this regard, because now the Russian troops are in Abkhazia and South Ossetia, and it's occupied now at 20% of Georgia, and it has a big influence in Abkhazia and South Ossetia, and the only civic society members can meet each other in different European cities to have connections, starting from humanitarian one to discuss how can this conflict transform, and how Abkhazians and Georgians can live together in one country, and it's going to affect as well this process, because it is going to be hard for peace building organizations in Georgia to to have this kind of meetings with the pushing from Russia as well. In Abkhazia, they will going to adopt this kind of law, the Russian law, foreign agent law, and I think in Abkhazia as well going to affect civic society. Last year they tried, but they also canceled the law, and yeah, it's going to be so hard for civic society to continue their work of peace building, of conflict transformation. And you asked me about Georgian Muslim communities. So our organization, Solidarity Community, is a grassroots organization, as I mentioned, and we are trying to promote diversity. We are trying to protect cultural heritage of Georgia, which is Georgian mosques, and we are doing it with the help of EU, from US and other Western partners. And without their financial support, it's going to be so hard to do, because we don't have our economy is not that strong that we like private sector fund would fund this kind of initiatives, and EU countries and US is funding this kind of projects to protect Muslims' rights in Georgia, to protect cultural heritage of Georgia, to have peace dialogue with the Abkhaz people, and with Sukhumi and Tbilisi, and with Tbilisi and Tskhinvali. So it's going to affect, and also I want to mention that we see how Georgian stance is changing, stance to EU or Russia. So this law would affect the course of the country, because it is not because all the we can see all these geopolitical comments, and only I don't know, Dugin, Bortnikov, and Patrushev and other people in Russia, and Medvedev likes this law, and we can see our partners in Europe and in US who say that it's going to undermine our democracy. And the most important is that Georgian people say no to this law, to this Russian law.
There's a question in the chat from Parsa from Armenia. I'm gonna read it for you. So greetings from Armenia. A question for Georgi. You mentioned Georgia's democracy has been threatened. However, the parliament is the speaker of the public. So do you think that democracy has failed the public?
Yes. The short answer is yes. Democracy is not just institutions, right? It's the will of people, and I see a big gap between will of people and Georgian parliament. So it's democracy is not just in institutions, it's the will of people, participation of the people, and I think when you have this kind of gap between public and politicians, it's not democracy. I read a lot of books and about democracy, and it's not a democracy and how democracy works.
I have a small question, because you were mentioning about how your organization is protecting mosques and things like this, and you're doing it with EU or US funding. Just like a specific example to understand more about this law, because I know there's also sometimes, from Muslim countries like Qatar or Saudi Arabia, they also, they're also interested in protecting Muslim heritage in different places. Like they found a lot of preservation efforts in Bosnia, etc. if you were, so for example, to get Saudi or Qatari or whatever financial support for your organization or any organization, will that also label them as a foreign agent, or is this law only? Is it only based on like Western
In Georgia,
finance?
most of the things are funding from West. I don't know, and I don't know any project which is funded by Qatar or any Arabic country. Mostly civic society are supported by EU and US, and this law, one of the things why this is a so-called Russian law is that it doesn't have any readings about who is the enemy and who is not, who is the enemy. I mean, take a look of Farah, and when US adopted this law, it was against the fascist regime in Germany, and in case of Georgia, it doesn't mention anyone who is threatened by this law. Like in Georgia, in any document, Russia is mentioned as a threatened country who wants to undermine our democracy and so on. And in this law, there is no any mention like enemies and friends and partners are in the same positions. So everyone who is funded 20%, more than 20% from foreign country is a foreign agent. Maybe physical person, I don't know, maybe organization, fund, any kind of institution who will receive money from foreign country would be foreign agent.
There's another question from Parsa as well. Are you optimistic about the implementation of EU and USA principles and values in Georgia in the future?
I think democracy and human rights is not EU or US principles. It's international, and it's general principles of how I see governing the country. And this law is not that kind of law, which is in framework of democracy and human rights, because it's going to limit freedom of speech, it's going to limit human rights, and it's going to undermine our democracy. That is why I don't think this is EU or US principles. And one of the supporters of democracy and human rights is EU and US. And I think if Argentinians would fund this kind of I don't know project in Georgia, I'm gonna be glad. So, but now I see EU and US who are doing this kind of funding. So our partners and friends in EU, US and EU.
I wanted to, before we close, some questions that pop in my mind. So there's this protests on the streets and the whole political debate going on. What about like the public opinion? What the public opinion polls say? And also on the same line, what about prominent figures from the public opinion, like celebrities or just like opinion shapers of Georgian society? Have they made a public stand about this?
Mm-hmm. From the polls, more than 85% of Georgian population would like to see Georgia in EU, and this is the public opinion. And this law is hinder Georgians' progress towards European Union, and also that means that population doesn't want this law, and the citizens doesn't want this law. And we can see Georgian national team footballers who are posting their opinion against this law and towards Europe and EU. Also, we can see artists. We are seeing not only civic society, representatives of civic society, but a general public who and people who are not like involved in politics are expressing their views and their thoughts about this law, that this is unacceptable, and they don't want to see this kind of laws in Georgia. So this is important because this pro-EU rallies and this democratic and peaceful protesters have support from general public. And I see from celebrities, starting from artists to footballers, that who are supporting this law.
Great. Okay. Well, I don't think we have any more questions in the chat either. I don't know if there's anything else you would like to add.
Yes, I want that it's important to people who it's important to have international support to these rallies and to have international reactions. And I want to encourage people who are listening to us and who are supporting Georgia to have more support of these rallies and to see Georgia, democratic Georgia, where human rights are defended. Thank you so much, Bright Garden Voices, and you personally.
No, thank you also. For those who don't know, Giorgi was a really big help helping us register in Georgia. So Bright Garden Voices owes him a lot. So thank you both for joining and for all your help.
Thanks so much.
Okay, thank you, Giorgi. Take care. And thank you everybody who joined. Bye-bye.